Faith Network to read the faith statement.
The Casey Multi-Faith Network exists to promote peace, harmony and understanding, and to do so in partnership with Casey Council and the wider Casey community. We aim to spread knowledge and clarity about what different religions or worldviews believe, teach and practice. We believe that all members of religions and faiths have the right to peacefully practice and celebrate their own religion in a shared attitude of friendly coexistence and cooperation with all other peoples. That's it.
Thank you.
It's a new one.
Please be seated. The City of Casey acknowledges that we're on the traditional land of the Bunurong and the Wurundjeri people and pay respects to all elders past and present. Are there any apologies this evening? Yes, Councillor Rowe.
Councillor Aziz.
Aziz. Councillor Castani.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Chair. Councillor Miller-Gillich. Thanks.
And of course the Mayor was mentioned before, so we have someone to move that. Councillor Flannery, seconded Councillor Castani. Thank you. If there's no dissent, we'll accept those apologies. Suspension of local law. Is there a mover and seconded to move the suspension of the local law and until I determine to reapply the local law? So moved Councillor Jackson, seconded Councillor Stapleton. Councillors, it is my item in the suspension of standing orders, and it's in relation to the state budget. Today the state government handed down its pre-election budget, which saw the biggest direct investment into the City of Casey with more than $1.4 billion in transport and education funding. It will see the government invest $1 billion in Casey Road funding for the next 5 years as part of a $2.2 billion public-private partnership. These investments include Hallam North Road from Heatherton Road to James Cook Drive in Endeavour Hills, Thompson's Road intersection works, the widening of Pound Road West, Remington Drive from 2 to 4 lanes between Abbots Road and South Gippsland Highway, and including a new bridge over the Cranbourne line. The Narrewarren-Cranbourne Road from Thompson's Road to South Gippsland Highway in Cranbourne, the Healesville-Cooeyup Road from Princess Freeway to Manx Road in Pakenham. This investment comes along $572 million to upgrade power and signals on the Cranbourne line to accommodate for high-capacity metro trains, as well as planning for future duplication. The budget also provides an additional $66 million in education funding for new schools in Botanic Ridge, Cranbourne East and Clyde North, as well as upgrades to some existing schools. The investment recognises the demand and the number of families who are choosing to call Casey home, and we're pleased that the Victorian Government has responded to our Commit to Casey campaign to address rapid population growth, as well as calls for our fair share in road and rail funding. And planning for our current and future residents' education is vital, and so too is ensuring that students can get to school safely and promptly. So I'll foreshadow as an urgent business item that we write to the government reiterating our thanks for their budget commitments. Is there, I now determine that the local law is reapplied. Is there a move and second to confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday the 17th of April 2018? Councillor Flannery, Councillor Stapleton, seconder. Is there a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of the special council meeting Monday 23rd of April 2018? Councillor Rosario, Councillor Jackson. If there's no dissent, I'll declare those two carried. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest or personal interest that they may wish to declare? Interest must be declared immediately before consideration of the item. Councillor Stapleton.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'd like to declare an indirect conflict of interest on items 6.1 and 6.6 as indicated to our acting CEO recently in an email. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll ask councillors now, are there any items that councillors wish to discuss?
6.1.
6.1 to Councillor Rowe. Councillor Stapleton.
6.7, please, Mr Deputy
7.
Mayor.
I will withdraw 6.5 and 6.6. Are there any other items? Then we'd like a motion that the adoption of reports 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, 6.8, 6.9 be moved as published. Councillor Cristani moving, Councillor Jackson seconding. Is there any dissent? I declare those moved. We move on to item 6.1, Councillor Rowe.
Thank you, Mr.
Sorry.
Mayor.
I can public questions. Ms. Frost. That was almost rehearsed or scripted. Not quite. Okay, thank you. So no public questions.
Okay.
Councillor Rowe.
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Stapleton.
Yep, thank you very much, Councillor Rowe, and thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor, just declaring that indirect conflict of interest
yes.
with item 6.1, as indicated via email to the acting CEO earlier today.
Sure. So
Thank
we'll just
you.
wait for you to vacate the chamber. Councillor Rowe.
Mr. Mayor, I move the recommendation in my name.
The seconder. Councillor Flannery. Thank you.
No debate.
No debate? There's no is there any dissent? Then I'll declare it carried. Thank you. We can call it back in. Councillors, 6.5 was withdrawn by me. It's in relation to the gaming, annual gaming machine contribution, community contribution from Lynbrook Hotel. There is an alternative recommendation. We'll give the councillors and gallery time to absorb it. It'll probably be over a couple of screens though. We'll just see. There we go.
Put the report up. That's right.
I'll give you a minute to...
It's all our structure plan.
We've had an indication that Councillor Rosario will second. How are we going with people? Mainly for the gallery, I think, as councillors did receive a copy of this prior to the meeting. So we might proceed. I'll be fairly quick. I thank councillors who came to a briefing last week where we were addressed by lawyers, we were addressed by representatives of the VLGA who put up compelling arguments that probably went along, well, definitely did coincide with officers' report, the original officers' report. The community in Lynbrook are quite worked up about this because it's been a long history of expectation for funds from the gambling venue to be distributed locally, and have been disappointed that they may not have been distributed to the level that was expected, or in the issues, the groups and projects that they would have expected. And I thank the LRA who took the position to challenge this with the Commission and forced the Commission, not forced, but enabled the Commission to reconsider the issue and made them come up with quite a unique decision, and the decision being that the venue be committed to paying $68,000 contribution. Can I also add that it was originally promised as $100,000, so it's come down a bit, but there were reasons for that, and we have to accept that. The Commission obviously did. And that the money be offered first to council as the point to distribute the money, and if not, that the venue operator be given the right to distribute the money. I think there was a clear community position that council should be the ones to distribute the money in order to make sure the money was distributed fairly, and that that the money could, as much as possible, stay local. The original report, and as a result, on the basis of officers' views plus legal opinion, and the VLGA was to not do that. There were some, absolutely, on paper, there's some very compelling reasons that they give, and I accept that that's their professional opinion, and they've made a good call from that point of view. Councillor Rosario and I come from a community position where the community there quite clearly is telling us that they want council to show some responsibility by taking up the offer of the Commission, which is very unusual. I don't think it's ever happened before. So, this is a unique case because it's just not... Commission's not been in a position to make a similar decision before. Councillor Stapleton and I are probably the only two around this table that were there from the beginnings of that decision. Even the officers weren't there. There are some people in the gallery that were, and will remember the promises that were made and the commitments that were made at the time of the original licence for machines. And I think it would be an understatement to say that we're disappointed in the way that that money has been managed and the lack of the funding being distributed. So we have taken, the Council Rosario and I have accepted and support the position of the community, particularly the LRA who have driven this, that the council should, it is a unique situation, but we do want council to take up the opportunity. The amended motion makes it also clear that we are going to tell the Commission we will we will opt in, the terminology they used, opt in or opt out, and that there'll be a further report at the June meeting which will talk about the governance, because we all accept that the governance issue is a problem. One, in that it will cost council to distribute this money, but I'll say that this council has become very good at distributing funds, its own funds and other people's. We've got governance models down to a T, and I don't think that would be too hard for us to come up with a governance model that will be acceptable to the Commission, acceptable to the community, and that may not be as fully a big cost impost on council. So I look forward to that next report. Councillor Stapleton has come up with some good suggestions, and I hope the officers will consider those in that next report. But councillors, I know this is very unusual. We probably, in other circumstances, wouldn't go along with this. But in the end, I suppose I'm asking you to trust the history, our knowledge of the history of this project, and also the passion and the will of the residents of Lynbrook, who were there from the beginning of this one and part of the initial negotiations, that this is worthy of an exemption and that we should go along with it. Is there any dissent? There is dissent, so I'll ask Councillor Rosario, do you wish to speak yet? Or?
I'll reserve.
Reserve?
Thank you.
Councillor Cristani, do you wish to go first?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just have a question first before I proceed with my dissent. Can I just ask, so you said that the Regulation Commission wasn't able to enforce, so who is enforcing the 68,000 distribution now? I just want to be clear about who has the power to enforce that now, if they couldn't for the last 10 years.
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, the new amended gaming licence that the Commission has affected now contains very clear conditions that must be met and obligations that must be met by the licensee and gaming operator to provide that distribution either to council or directly to the community, and that's a distribution of $68,000 annually in 4 equal instalments. And if they do not comply with that particular obligation, either in whole or in part, then they must cease the operation of all of their gaming machines at the venue, which currently comprise 55 gaming machines.
Thanks, Mr Chair. I still dissent on this for a number of reasons. I've been consistent on the issue, and that is the damage that it causes. I'm talking about the social damage it causes for gaming machines. And we had a representative from the VGLA who gave us the stats that half of all the gambling is still done through pokie machines. I'm also concerned about an item about money laundering. Now, that's beside the point, really. I'm not talking about us. I'm just talking about there's that concern too. But by looking about being in partnership with a gambling firm, to me, is a bad reputational risk. And I'm concerned about the social impact to the community.
Point of order, Mr
Yes,
Deputy Mayor. Yep. With the greatest respect to Councillor Cristani, we aren't in partnership.
What's the
There
point
is
of order?
no.
Okay,
There is
so the
absolutely
point of order is
error of fact.
error of fact.
Yep, there is no partnership here. This has been mandated by the Commission that this money be given to Council to disseminate to community members in their best interest. And the other point of order around error of fact would be that we aren't talking about poker machine applications where they do damage in the community. We are talking about funds that already exist and will only go back to the Lynbrook Hotel should we not accept these funds. We're not talking about the harm it does to the community. We're trying to make sure that that money that will remain, we can't do anything about that, we're just trying to make sure that that money goes to those most in need in our community.
I will rule in your favour because I think the choice of word partnership was not appropriate because it clearly isn't a partnership.
Okay, we'll call it another word, but the reality is it has a link between this firm and us. Look, to be honest, I'm concerned that the money, regardless of where we want to say it still comes through gambling, and there is people suffering in the community from this issue. I've had my dissent, and that's it. Thanks.
Yeah, fair enough. Right. Councillor Stapleton, and then I'll ask for any. So we'll dissent. So we'll go Councillor Stapleton first. Yeah.
Oh, mine's just a question. We were talking about. We were talking about the fact that now there's new regulations in place which will ensure that that the person who has the funds actually does hand them out to the community. I'd like to ask, is there any prescription around that, or can they basically hand that money out to anyone that they choose?
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, conditions of the licence that require the payment of the contribution to the community are governed by a set of criteria, so that they must be made to community groups or organisations or not-for-profit organisations that either are directly in the Lynbrook for the benefit of Lynbrook residents or provide services to the benefit of Lynbrook residents. So it is somewhat ambiguous. It's acknowledged, and we've relayed that to the Commission. But in general, it is targeted for the Lynbrook community, but it can conceivably be to the benefit of residents outside of Lynbrook as well.
Sorry, just confirming, it can also be given to people outside of Lynbrook as well.
We have currently the way that it is wording, the wording of the condition is that it is primarily directed for the benefit of residents within the Lynbrook or the Lynbrook community, but the current wording of the conditions does provide the opportunity for it to be distributed wider than just the Casey, wider than just the Lynbrook community. Hence why part of the officer recommendation actually sought to tighten that wording to limit it to the Lynbrook community solely.
Thank you very much. And it was just as I suspected. You know, we were of the understanding that this was to benefit the Lynbrook community and people like Cranbourne Information Support Service and those who have require assistance with help for gambling. One of the things I would ask, if we're going wider out in the community, and I've just forgotten my question. I'm going to have to come back to that. I'm so sorry. I just waffled on about the other bit and I forgot my question. But in any case, one of my concerns is that it would be more broad than we first planned. Oh, that's my question. I'm sorry. Yeah. Could you please tell me what do you think the chances are of our additional request to the Commission, if we put it to them, of them obliging it? Because I have heard in the advice that I've received that it's not held in the strongest of confidence that we would secure that now that the decision has been made.
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, can I ask, are you referring to the confining the distribution of contributions just to Limbrook? Yeah. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
There is no ability for council to direct the licensee, or indeed we can make a request of the Commission to actually further amend the condition that currently governs the distribution of the contributions. Our initial approaches to the licensee of the hotel has indicated that he believes he has, quite strong relationships with the Limbrook community, and that he will be distributing it according to those requirements that he's bound by under the terms of the licence. But we still have the ability, as has been articulated through the recommendation that we've put to council, to make a request of the Commission and of the licensee to consider rewording or further amending the condition to actually require that distribution solely to the Limbrook community. Yeah. So the chances, I can't comment as to the actual chances of that, because there's no precedent for us to go by. But all we can do is request or ask that to happen. Yeah. So there is a mechanism for the Commission to do that, to initiate that, or indeed for the licensee to initiate it. So council can't initiate it, we can only ask.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. And just a couple of questions first for the officers. Do we do this for any other venue in Casey?
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, no, there's no other instances where Casey are receiving or distributing revenue or community contributions through a gaming licence, no.
Thank you. Who's the responsible authority for this, and are they governed by state legislation?
The regulator in this instance is the Victorian Commission for Gambling and Liquor Regulation, which is a state body working under the jurisdiction of the Gambling Regulation Act.
And in your opinion, the legal advice provided to council, was it for or against opting in?
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, the legal advice sought was particularly pertaining to the various governance structures that would need to be put in place. That advice said that we currently do not have any such governance structures, and there are a range of risks that council will need to consider in making a decision whether to opt in or opt out. Those risks, while relatively low, are such that council should be very cautious in agreeing to opt in this matter.
Thank you. And so, Mr Deputy Mayor, one more question before I have my dissent. Do the funds as they stand, the amount of that funds, will that stand regardless of whether council opts in or opts out to distribute them? So perhaps let me rephrase. Will the funds still have to be distributed in the $68,000 with or without council?
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, yes, that annual contribution of $68,000, the licence requires that to be distributed annually in 4 equal instalments of $17,000 over a period of 4.5 years.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I'll be quick in my dissent, and I understand the concerns of the community in relation to this, and I appreciate those concerns of the community. I have some significant issues, though, in relation to the governance. I have some significant concerns in relation to the legal advice, and I have concerns that we're getting involved in scenarios that isn't council's business. I understand there are concerns from the community, and clearly this, the licence is governed by state legislation. It is a state body that governs and is responsible for this. We should be advocating to the state government of the day to change that legislation, to tighten it, to put more things in, rather than ultimately taking control and taking a risk on for council in an area that we don't normally do. I understand the concern about ensuring that the money is distributed in the Lynbrook area of where the hotel resides, and it's obviously distributed outside of that, and that is one of the concerns. But I'm not sure the entire patrons of Lynbrook are just the Lynbrook residents. I'm sure they do come from other parts of Casey as well. Mr Deputy Mayor, it's really the governance issues and the legal issues that have me against this, and that we shouldn't be involved in things that we're not. Mr Deputy Mayor, I'd like to foreshadow a further motion, though, if this motion is lost. on the basis of I still think it is important that we write to the Commission and try and tidy that wording up anyway. So I'd like to foreshadow a further motion if the motion is lost.
Any other? Councillor Rosario, you wish to take up your option as seconder?
Oh, did you? Sorry.
Could I just ask a
Question?
Thank you very much. Thank you. And if I could just ask a question, by going down the route that we have up before us, was the legal advice that what we might do in this regard be that we're doing something illegal or legal? And then I've just got some commentary to say after that, if you don't mind.
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, no, the legal advice is not coming back suggesting that any action taken by council to opt in would be in any way illegal. It certainly was just about establishing the appropriate governance structures and accepting that there is an element of risk in various, fiduciary type risks and reputational risks and potential conflicts of interest that council would need to consider before making that decision.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate Councillor Cristani and Councillor Jackson's objection to this, and I share their view on poker machines, I can assure you. However, this isn't as if a resident has come and asked us to do this for them, and on that basis I wouldn't be supporting it. It is actually the state government authority who have deemed us to do this, and that is because of the history. And if I could just share the history, and Councillor Smith mentioned this briefly, I was councillor for the Limbrook area when the hotel did say in relation to the poker machines that are coming up that they would contribute a significant amount of money to the Limbrook and wider community, targeting those community groups and individuals in need. And it is my understanding that perhaps that hasn't occurred the way that was promised. So then the Limbrook Residents Association took it upon themselves so gallantly to challenge this, and the deeming by the Commission is that council take these funds over. Now, I understand every aspect of why council would be concerned about that, and I just wondered if we had an alternative, which is in some part what Councillor Smith, Councillor Rosario and myself put forward, that it would alleviate a lot of the admin for council, but also a lot of perhaps the concern around, I suppose, around community concern about where the funds are going. If we don't opt in, what is going to happen is that money is not going to go away. That money is going to sit with the Limbrook Hotel, it's going to sit with the licensee, and they will be able...
Are you aware, I assume?
Sorry, are you aware?
Yes,
sorry,
thank you.
yes. Are you aware? Sorry, I did start with a question, but that is going to sit with the licensee, and they will distribute it the way they want. And I agree with Councillor Jackson. Let's write to the state government body and ask them to tighten up this legislation. But for the meantime, this money, which is $68,000 every year for a period of 5 years, is going to sit with the licensee to distribute the way they see fit. That legislation will not anytime
Sorry,
soon.
Mr Deputy Mayor, with all due respect to Councillor Stapin, just a point of order. Councillor Stapin says it'll be able to be distributed wherever they see fit. There are some very tight, well not tight, but there are some restraints on that, ensuring that is delivered to the community, to non-for-profits. And,
and I take your point, Councillor Jackson.
Agree.
Thank you.
Yep. I uphold that.
And individuals, yes. And look, I take your point. Sorry, could I rephrase that? That it can be disseminated any way he sees fit within the parameters that he's been given, which are quite loose. I think this, any changes to the state government body, to the state government legislation will be too late in this instance, and I feel a social responsibility to make sure that that money is disseminated the way that it was intended to support the Limbrook community and wider community, and I totally support this recommendation before us.
Okay. Councillor Rosario, I think you're next.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. I just thought I'd sum up some of the conversations because I think we've covered a lot of good ground here in terms of both sides. And look, I agree, this is a terrible situation to be in as a council, that we were not consulted prior to this sort of decision being made that we should opt in or opt out. If we had the opportunity to consult and work with the Commission on this, we could have perhaps guided them in terms of advice on how to tighten up the conditions that would allow the operator to be more transparent in the way that they would distribute those funds. And unfortunately, now what we have is a very unique situation, as you put it, Mr. Deputy Mayor. And I guess from my perspective as a fellow ward councillor and someone who represents the Limbrook community and wider as well, it's a matter of trust. For 10 years, the community and councillors have been fighting hard on getting the fair share of what was promised initially back in 2007. And to this day, it's only just happened now. And I feel a great need for justice here for the community, because we have a unique opportunity. While it is not our area, and I acknowledge this, it is a unique opportunity for us to stand in and take ownership of something that we would not otherwise really have any sway over, and to be able to then help to guide those funds to places that need it, and through a governance structure of some sort that if this motion goes through, that it would come up later in terms of our vast experience as a council. What would that look like? I would look forward to the office's recommendations on that moving forward. But with the connections, you know, it was mentioned by Councillor Cristani as well, that we would be connected to these sorts of venues and things like that. The venue is there, and it's already generating income from those machines. What we have now is something that's coming back to the community, and we could do some good with that. And I think to have money go in a very vague way without understanding the processes around what decisions are being made, that it is allocated to a particular group. I'm aware, I think one group in Berwick received some funding. I'd be interested to know what decisions were made in order for a group in Berwick to receive that funding. And I think that transparency is important, and I don't get that feel from the operator that they have that level of transparency in terms of how that is operating. So, I mean, in my personal opinion as well, and this is only a personal opinion, Mr. Deputy Mayor, I find it interesting that we were nominated to opt in or opt out.
We do need an extension of time, or are you happy to wrap up in 2 seconds?
I'll wrap up in the next few seconds, Mr. Mayor. But essentially, my personal opinion is that why were we nominated unless it's possible that there is no confidence in or a lack of confidence in the hotel facility to be able to distribute the funds? I don't know. It is a personal opinion. But here we are today, and all I ask from my fellow councillors is to consider the community and the aspects there. And I'm going to sit down
Stretching the friendship.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yours is possible.
Okay. Look, I'll sum up or close very quickly. This is not about supporting or not supporting gaming machines. It's nothing to do with that. My record of voting on gambling machines would prove that I'm not a big fan. However, we have a situation where that exists. History tells us that unless we get involved, that the distribution of the money can't be guaranteed to stay local. It was interesting that we're talking. I asked on the night when the lawyers were present, and also tonight we've heard the same thing, that what we're proposing in this alternative motion is not illegal. You know, we are within our rights and our power to do it. Sure, there might be some risk, but this council and every council takes risks in lots of things it does. There was a comment, I'm not sure whether it was part of this debate, but certainly in other discussions around this, maybe outside this chamber, where there was talk about the risk of reputational risk. Well, yeah, there is some reputational risk, but it's also reputational risk for us in that community that feels that I don't know that they're big supporters of poker machines either, but the money is there. They've fought for the right to have an amount distributed. They've got that, and they would like council to take up the opportunity to distribute. I don't believe council should be distributing it either, but the history of this proves to me that this is the safest way to make sure that money that the community is entitled to gets back to the community. So, and the other thing, it was interesting talking about the governance of it. I think this council has an excellent reputation in terms of governance of distribution of funds. So to question that, you know, we may not be able to, you know, the question that we won't get the governance right, well, I don't believe that. I think we will get the governance right. The officers will come back with a governance model. Tonight's motion, though, does indicate to the Commission that we will opt in, we will take the funding. but we will need just a little bit of time to get that governance model right. So I'd ask councillors on behalf of the Glenbrook community, more than anything else here tonight, whether you agree with poker machines or not. This is a unique situation. I don't know that any other council's ever been put in this position, but you have to think about why the Commission made that decision to offer council this opportunity. And I think, you know, you can read between the lines or whatever, however you want to put it. I think their thinking is pretty clear in the fact that they have asked us to consider taking it on. So with that, I'll end the debate and I'll put the motion to the floor. All those in favour? All those against?
Mr Deputy, division.
Yeah, we haven't got a vote. Haven't got a decision yet. The motion is carried. Councillor Cristani is called for a division. So if all those in favour could stand. Oh, I've got to read that. I don't normally do it. I'm just waiting for someone to read it. Councillor Rosario, Stapleton, Rowe, Smith and Saray. Against? Councillors, I was going to say Jackson, but it's over the wrong side. Flannery, Jackson and Cristani. So I declare that motion carried. Thank you, councillors. And congratulations on, it was a very reasonable debate and I think everyone was very rational and I can see points from both sides, absolutely. Okay, next item, Casey Radio. It's my item again, so it's item 6.6. I'm moving the recommendation with a slight change. And if I can just find it. Sorry, yes, Councillor Stapleton, yes.
Thank you. I wish to declare an indirect, might be a direct conflict of interest. I think it's indirect, as indicated to the acting CEO earlier today.
Thank you. We'll wait for you to leave the room. Councillors, the only point I wish to change is that item 2 read that funding allocated to Casey Radio, funding remain allocated to Casey Radio in the 2018-19 budget, and then after budget, comma, to be quarantined until council makes a decision to release it. If I can get suggestion of better wording, I'm happy to.
To the proposed 2018-19 budget.
In the proposed 2018-19, yep, well done. Mr. Coldham, you happy with, we can live with that? Yep, thank you. A seconder, Councillor Rosario. My debate will be simple. We've had lots of discussions in this chamber about the funding situation with Casey Radio. We certainly stopped funding Casey Radio some time ago based on our concerns with governance and management of the station. The station has done a pretty remarkable turnaround in terms of its completely new management, and the governance is certainly on the improve. They're going through a forensic audit of the books to get issues, questions over finances sorted. They've started to undertake governance training. They had a full day of governance training for their board and members on the weekend, with another one coming up soon that I hope they've asked for me to attend, and I hope I can get there because I think it'd be interesting to be part of it. Tonight, I could have asked for the $75,000 that's currently quarantined to be handed over, because I think they're pretty ready. The Mayor certainly does, and the Mayor was pressuring me and wanting to know why I wasn't just moving that the money be handed over. Casey Radio themselves have said they would love that, but they don't believe they've done enough to prove that they're ready to take it. And I think that's a pretty big call for an organisation that could have probably asked for it and possibly might have got it. They themselves have said they're not ready for it. They're almost there, but they're not quite. So I suspect that in the next possibly couple of months, they might come back to us with a report, and they're certainly presenting to us at the GP meeting, I think is it next week? I think next Tuesday. And one of the things they'll be presenting to us is on their new direction and their governance and management. So that may well come up sooner than later. I don't want them to lose out on the opportunity for the money that we have got allocated in the draft budget for 2018-19 either. At the moment, they are suffering financially because of the lack of council funding. They also fully accept the reasons why council had to cease the funding. But there are some pressing issues in terms of equipment. They have to completely redo their transmitter, and that's not out of any choice other than the government is forcing, the broadcasting authorities are forcing a change of broadcast frequency, and they have no choice but to update their transmission equipment, and that is going to pretty well take up that nearly all of that 75,000 when they can get it. They don't have to do it yet. That's why they're not under intense pressure to do it in the next weeks or days. They've got a little bit of time up their sleeve, but when and if we can release that 75,000, that's where that will go into getting the station a bit more certainty in the future. And in the meantime, they also don't want to lose that opportunity of getting the funding that would have been coming to them in the next budget. We still will have the power to decide whether to release it, but I want to make sure it's there. I suppose the good news is that if, for whatever reason, council decides not to release any of the existing money or the new budget allocation, that it could be available to be reused in other areas. So at this stage, I don't want that to be a deterrent to us, or to them, to keep plodding on and improving their operation. So I commend councillors to prepare. Have we got, yes. Yeah, oh, I forgot to set the timer. Damn. Oh. Okay. Seconder, Councillor Rosario, do you wish, is there any dissent? That's probably the, okay, you don't get to speak. Okay, I'll count that as carried. So thank you, councillors, for that. If we could call Councillor Stapleton in, because she's got the last item. Was I supposed to time myself? No one told me that. Yeah, but I wasn't listening to you. Councillor Stapleton, you're 6.7.
You're 6.7.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to move this recommendation in my name. Thank you.
And we have a seconder, Councillor Rowe. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. And I'd like to thank the officers very much for the hard work that they've done on this. I just wondered if there might be an opportunity into the future, because with some of the statistics, I've actually got some contra information heading my way. It just hasn't arrived in time for the meeting. I just wondered if we were able to send you further information at a later stage. It's not that I mean, I'm really happy with the decision. That's the reason I put this up.
Councillor, you are moving the recommendation.
I am moving.
Yep, that's right.
Did I not say
Yeah, you
that?
probably did. Yeah. I was interrupted by my own thoughts.
Yes, look, I'm really happy I'm very satisfied that the right recommendations come before us, but it did talk about looking at this into the future. I think it's just such an exciting concept, and the fact that it is sensitive to any level of wind, and certainly if placed strategically is very effective. So I wondered if I could send you further information once I have that available, just so that we can revisit this and just see if this isn't something worth considering into the future.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, be very happy to consider, and I think that's the world of this sort of technology. When something comes on the market, it may not be optimal at the start, but then it continues to evolve. So I don't think we want to rule anything out in the long term. So happy to take that and consider it further down the track.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to thank you and your team for all your hard work. I know you're doing a lot of work in this area. It's very exciting indeed, and it's great to be able to explore things. And I'd like to keep that wind tree open for investigation into the future.
All right, thank you.
And just like to get the support of my fellow councillors for the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. O'Connor. Any dissent on that matter? Therefore, I declare it carried. Thank you. Is there a mover and seconder to receive and note the record of assembly of councillors as listed? Moved Councillor Cristani, seconded Councillor Jackson. Is there any dissent? Carried. Petitions. Are there any petitions that councillors wish to present? There being none, thank you. Notice of the motion. We have three. Councillor Ablett has asked his to be deferred till the next meeting, and Councillor Saray, yours has been withdrawn, I understand. Correct? So, Councillor Stapleton, 3224.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Mayor. If I can make just a slight change before I move this recommendation.
Sure.
If I could just, on the third line of